The night had the kind of quiet that only broken people seem to notice, the heavy hush that settles when the world keeps moving but your own life feels paused. The bar lights were low and amber, reflecting off half-empty glasses and tired faces, and somewhere between the hum of soft music and the clink of ice, two strangers sat side by side without knowing their lives were about to change. One was a single father carrying grief and exhaustion like a second skin. The other was a powerful CEO drowning in success yet aching with a loneliness money could not touch. They did not plan to meet, but sometimes the most important moments arrive unannounced, disguised as ordinary nights. Before the story unfolds any further, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of human connection. Stories like this remind us that even one small moment can change a life forever. Michael Carter had not intended to stay long. He rarely did these days. Life had become a careful routine of work, parenting, and survival since his wife passed away 3 years earlier, leaving him alone to raise their 6-year-old son, Noah, in a small Ohio town. That evening, Noah was staying with Michael's sister, and Michael found himself wandering into a modest downtown bar after a long shift at the auto repair shop. His hands still smelled faintly of oil, and his shoulders carried the weight of bills, school lunches, and sleepless nights. Sitting at the bar was not an escape for him, it was simply a pause, a place where no one needed anything from him for a few quiet minutes. A few stools away sat Rebecca Whitmore, though no one there knew her name or her status. She was the CEO of a fast-growing tech firm based in Chicago, in town for a merger meeting that had ended with handshakes and hollow congratulations. Her tailored jacket and composed posture marked her as someone important, yet her eyes betrayed a deep fatigue. At 42, Rebecca had everything she once prayed for: financial freedom, influence, admiration, but none of it had followed her back to the hotel room at night. Her marriage had dissolved years earlier under the strain of ambition and absence, and friendships had thinned as her world became increasingly transactional. That night, she did not want to be recognized. She wanted to be invisible. Fate placed Michael beside her when the bar grew busier and space became scarce. They sat in silence, two lives running parallel, both quietly unraveling in different ways. Michael stared into his glass, thinking about Noah's upcoming school presentation and the worn-out sneakers he needed to replace. Rebecca watched the reflection of the television screen in the mirror behind the bar, barely registering the images. There was no conversation, no grand moment, just a shared stillness that felt strangely comforting. For Michael, it was rare to sit next to someone who didn't look at him with pity or expectation. For Rebecca, it was the first time in months she felt like just another person in the room. As the night wore on, something subtle shifted. Michael's tired posture softened, and Rebecca's guarded expression eased. They exchanged a few glances, nothing more, yet there was an unspoken recognition there. Two people carrying invisible burdens, acknowledging each other without words. When Michael eventually stood to leave, he nodded politely and walked out into the cool night air, unaware that he had left an imprint on someone who had almost forgotten what genuine human presence felt like. Rebecca stayed longer, finishing her drink slowly, replaying the moment in her mind. It unsettled her how such a small interaction had stirred something she thought was long gone. There had been no agenda, no expectation, no performance. Just a man who looked tired in a way she recognized, in a way that mirrored her own exhaustion. When she finally returned to her hotel, the silence felt louder than ever. The next day passed in a blur of meetings, emails, and polished smiles. Rebecca performed flawlessly, but her thoughts kept drifting back to that bar, to that quiet man whose name she didn't know. She told herself it was ridiculous, a fleeting thought born of stress and loneliness. Yet as evening approached, she found herself changing clothes, not into another business outfit, but into something simple and unassuming. Without overthinking it, she returned to the same bar, unsure of what she hoped to find. Michael had not planned to return. But after another long day and an unexpected sense of restlessness, he found himself back on the same stool, hands folded, mind heavy. When Rebecca walked in and saw him there, a wave of relief washed over her that surprised her with its intensity. She took a seat nearby, heart beating faster than it had in years. This time, the silence between them felt different, charged with anticipation and familiarity. Over the next several nights, they began to share the same space, gradually allowing pieces of their lives to surface through quiet observations and small gestures. Michael spoke of Noah, of learning to braid hair for school mornings and reading bedtime stories through his own exhaustion. Rebecca shared the weight of leadership, the isolation at the top, the constant pressure to be strong and certain. Their conversations were not dramatic or romanticized, they were honest, raw, and deeply human. In each other, they found a rare sense of being seen. Michael struggled with doubt. He had spent years believing his life had narrowed, that joy was something he used to have, not something waiting ahead. Rebecca wrestled with vulnerability, with the fear that stepping away from control would expose wounds she had long ignored. Yet night after night, they returned, choosing presence over protection. The bar became a sanctuary, a place where titles and losses were set aside. Slowly, change took root. Michael began to smile more easily, finding renewed patience with Noah and a spark of hope he hadn't felt since his wife's passing. Rebecca started questioning the life she had built, recognizing that success without connection felt hollow. She extended her stay, postponing flights, allowing herself to exist outside the relentless pace of her career. As weeks passed, their bond deepened, grounded not in fantasy but in shared resilience. Rebecca visited Michael's world, seeing the modest apartment filled with laughter and toy cars, witnessing the strength it took to show up every day as a single parent. Michael glimpsed Rebecca's reality, understanding the cost of leadership and the courage it took for her to admit loneliness. They did not rescue each other, instead, they stood side by side, learning that companionship did not require perfection. Near the end of her stay, Rebecca faced a decision that terrified her. Returning to her old life felt unbearable, yet staying meant confronting uncertainty. Michael, too, feared change, afraid to hope for more than survival. On her final night in town, they sat together, the bar buzzing softly around them, both aware that something meaningful had already happened regardless of what came next. Rebecca realized she did not need to abandon her career to reclaim her humanity. Michael realized he did not need to forget his past to embrace a future. Before this story reaches its final moments, if it has touched your heart even a little, please like and share this video. Your support helps stories of hope and kindness reach those who may need them most. Rebecca returned to Chicago with a different perspective, restructuring her schedule, prioritizing people over profits. Michael continued raising Noah with renewed strength, carrying the knowledge that connection was still possible. They stayed in touch, not clinging, not rushing, but allowing life to unfold naturally. Their meeting had not solved all their problems, but it had reminded them both that loneliness is not a life sentence. Just before the ending, we ask you to comment below and share what this story made you feel, because your words may comfort someone reading them today. Months later, when Rebecca visited Ohio again, it wasn't for business. It was for a quiet dinner, a walk through familiar streets, and the simple joy of being present with someone who understood her beyond her achievements. Michael watched Noah laugh beside them and felt gratitude swell in his chest. The bar where they first met still stood, unchanged, a silent witness to the night two wounded souls found each other without trying. If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of the power of unexpected connections, please engage with this video. Sometimes, all it takes is one seat at a bar, one quiet moment, to change everything.